Good afternoon and welcome to the Tracy Show. You know it's Tracy with the I, not with the Y. I am back with an update on Robert Brooks, the inmate who was unalived by the correctional officers at the Marcy Correctional Facility. We remember Robert Brooks, yes we do, and we remember this fatal night. I just want to freeze it right here for 1 minute. The video that I am about to show is very, very disturbing, very trigger warning. If there are any children around, please let them go into another room. There are a total of 10 correctional officers that have been charged in connection to the beating, unalivement of inmate Robert Brooks at the Marcy Correctional Facility on December 9th, 2024. The beating was captured on body-worn cameras from some of the officers involved. Several of the officers involved have pleaded guilty, and 4 of those officers, Anthony Fina, Nicholas Anzalone, Michael Mashaw, and David Walters, were sentenced by Oneida County Court Judge Robert L. Bauer on Friday morning, November 21st. Of the other COs involved, 2 have already been sentenced on guilty pleas. 1 was found guilty at trial in October and is scheduled for sentencing on December 16th. 2 were acquitted of all charges at the same trial, and 1 other CO is scheduled for his own trial in January. Robert Brooks Jr.'s prepared a statement, and I quote, "Watching your actions on camera felt like I was stuck in a horror movie, and you guys were the monsters. I felt broken, and there was nothing I could do. You showed my dad no mercy at all. You treated my dad like he was an object and not a human. Watching your actions on camera felt like I was stuck in a horror movie and you guys were the monsters. I felt broken and there was nothing I could do." Wow. Nobody here wins. Nobody here wins. Robert Brooks Jr. loses his father, the family members, they lose a son, a brother, a uncle. This is horrible. 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 And now the COs are in prison, having to leave their family for years and years. But this is the consequence. This is the consequence. When you do wrong, there are consequences. If this had not been on body cam, let me know in the comments if you think these officers, all 10, would have gotten off. Or maybe, do you think the public would have even seen this at all? Here is the live sentencing of the 4 officers who were sentenced on November 21st. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and please subscribe.
Last December, I watched you beat my father to death on camera. You showed my father no mercy at all. You treated my dad like he was an object and not a human. Watching your actions on camera felt like I was stuck in a horror movie, and you guys were the monsters. I felt broken, and there was nothing I could do. I will never get my dad back. I pray your loved ones never have to endure the kind of pain I experienced. All of this could have been avoided if you and your fellow officers just did your job. My dad would be alive. I pray this case teaches others that they can't treat incarcerated people like animals. I pray this case sparks real conversation about the need for change the prison system that you are entering. This time, we're in green instead of blue. Now, Your Honor, I will read the statement from Jared Ricks, the brother of the victim. Good morning. My name is Jared Ricks, and I am the brother of Robert Brooks. My brother was my idol growing up. He was wise beyond his years, had a heart of gold, and lit up any room he walked in. I will not allow these fateful final moments to define his legacy. Over the last 11 months, my family has felt so many emotions. Grief, anger, resentment, hopelessness are all at the top of that list. Witnessing someone you love being treated with such cruelty by the correctional officers of the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision has opened our eyes to the atrocities transpiring behind those walls. My brother's situation was an anomaly. Not because these organized beatings of incarcerated individuals don't happen. We know that they do. But because the 30-minute recording of the body worn cameras exists. We've heard countless stories that mirror the events of December 9th, 2024, but justice was not served. Today, we get justice. Today, we heal just a little bit, knowing that you are no longer authoritative figures of this system that failed Robert Brooks. You will now have a unique experience of going from officer to convict. As you men begin your journey into the New York State Department of Corrections, I hope your welcome committee shows more grace than you gave my brother on December 9th of 2024. Your Honor, we would just ask that these statements be incorporated to the following sentences of the other co-defendants. We won't reread those for each one of those sentences. Your Honor, I'll just briefly follow up with a statement from the people. And Judge, obviously there's not much more that I can say that the family, Mr. Ricks and Mr. Brooks, haven't already. And it is important that we now get to shift our gear to the focus of the victim and what happened to him. This entirety of this investigation and this trial and these pleas and sentences were focused on the defendants. They're focused on their atrocities and their actions. And I think Mr. Ricks and Mr. Brooks appropriately stated who their father, who their brother was. And that's important to know. It's because in their image, in their eyes, we get to see the man that Mr. Brooks was. We get a sense of who he could have been, not for him coming across these individuals. When we circle back to the beginning of this investigation, we get a deeper look into the Department of Corrections and what goes on in the correctional facility. And unfortunately, Mr. Brooks came across Mr. Fina on that date. Mr. Brooks, in search of safety and security because of experiences that he was enduring in the Mashaw Correctional Facility, it came to light that he was seeking safety and protection from the wrong place, unfortunately. That when he received that welcoming committee, it was not from the individuals that were supposed to be protecting him, and yet it was those individuals that became his abusers. Throughout the investigation, you'll see, or we've seen, that he's beaten, he is broken, he's unprotected, he's unsafe, and these men took advantage of that, of a man in that dire straits. And it is unfortunate that we won't be able to see what Mr. Brooks would have done with his life after he exited that facility, and that these individuals, these incarcerated individuals, these men and women serving their time will be granted that opportunity to be better once they leave. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Rihanna, would you like to?
Yeah, just brief. I come to know Anthony well throughout this case. What appears on body worn camera is not the man I know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rihanna. Mr. Fina, is there anything that you want to say prior to being sentenced? Statements on Mr. Fina's behalf that were attached there too. There was one overriding theme in a great many of them, which implored me to show leniency and impose a sentence less than was agreed to by the parties. So we're all very clear and very much on the same page. This is an agreed upon sentence. This is an agreement that was reached between the prosecution and the defense. At this juncture, this court has no authority for the people's asking to sentence to a minute more than was agreed to, or for anyone else is asking to sentence to a minute less than was agreed to. The agreed upon sentence is what will be imposed here today. As to the conviction for manslaughter in the first degree, the defendant is hereby sentenced to a determinate sentence of 22 years in state prison. In addition, there is imposed 5 years of post-release supervision, along with a mandatory surcharge, crime victim, and DNA fees, which will total $375. The defendant is committed for the term of the sentence.
Your Honor, from the record, that will be released.
This is the matter of the people against Nicholas Antone, indictment 25035. This matter is on for sentencing. As back on September 22nd, the defendant pled guilty to 1 count of manslaughter in the first degree.
I think it is important that while we have seen the videos, the relevant videos in this case many times, both in the media, in the trial, and throughout this investigation, and truthfully speaking, I don't want to harp on that video any more than we have to, because it was traumatic for all that have watched. Your Honor, what is really troubling and what really affects the people in this situation is the face and expressions of Mr. Antone during that assault. Of all of the defendants and all of the individuals that were present and or assisting in that assault, Mr. Antone seemed to be the one that got enjoyment from it. That he doesn't get the welcoming committee, and I do hope that as well, Your Honor. And I do hope that he is afforded an opportunity to be better and grow from his experience when he is inside. But truly, I fear that he will and has learned nothing. Because a person that we saw do what he did on that video and take the pleasure in that is someone that I don't think is redeemable at all.
Other aspect is there's, based on medical conditions in type 1, back then we got some letter from his endocrinologist that asked me to be accompanying the pre-sentence report as a prison into the prison.
You're welcome to attach that as well.
Thank you, Judge. Would I have much else?
Yes.
I want to make comments, Judge. I was really wanted to talk about, all this time of representing Mr. Antone, not just him.
Well, for the record, the defendant waived his right to appeal at the time of this plea, so I'm not going over those rights again. I've been at this a long time, and I've seen a lot of terrible things in this room. I've never seen so many lives destroyed in a moment. The defendant is sentenced as follows. As to the conviction for manslaughter in the first degree, the defendant is hereby sentenced to a determinate sentence of 22 years in state prison. That is along with 5 years post-release supervision. In addition, there is imposed a mandatory surcharge, crime victim, and DNA fees, which will total $375. The defendant is committed for the term of the sentence.
Mashaw.
Good morning, Thomas Capezza, on behalf of Michael Mashaw.
Good morning, Mr. Professor. Mr. Professor, you're being returned your client's passport. This is the matter of the people against Michael Mashaw, Document 25035. This matter is on for sentencing today. Back on September 22nd, the defendant pled guilty to one count of manslaughter in the second degree, with an agreed upon sentence of 3 to 9 years in state prison, along with mandatory state surcharges. Is that the people's understanding?
It is, Your Honor.
Mr. Professor, that's your understanding?
Yes, Your Honor, and he has not waived his right to appeal.
I won't belabor many points here, but I do feel that the record needs to be clear that Mr. Mashaw was the sergeant that night. But more than that, he was the lead sergeant. As we found in the trial, he was solely and individually responsible in his own mind for that use of force on Mr. Brooks. So while Mr. Brooks was being beaten, while Mr. Brooks was deteriorating before his eyes, that was Mr. Mashaw's responsibility. And he did nothing. He didn't help Mr. Brooks. He walked out of the room after Mr. Brooks had been stripped down to his underwear, clearly in absolute crisis, and he mocked him. And we saw that, and it was captured on video as he looked at Sergeant Trombley, and he arranged his hands as Mr. Brooks' hands were being held up by his head while Mr. Brooks was dying.
Mashaw has accepted responsibility for what occurred, but there's much more to Michael Mashaw than December of that year. Michael Mashaw is devoted to his faith, devoted to his family, devoted to his friends.
Counsel, Mr. Mashaw, is there anything you want to say prior to your sentencing? No, Your Honor. I'll impose the agreed upon sentence. I did review the character letters that were submitted. They speak very well of you, Mr. Mashaw. Appreciate your service to our country. The words of the prosecution are well put here in the sense that some of us have spent a lot of time watching and rewatching that video in the recent trial of this matter. There's individuals responsible for what they did. I couldn't help but notice as you stood there while this unfolded. The seal of the state of New York on one shoulder, the American flag on the other shoulder. You were there for us, you were the purpose. The person who had the authority, whose job it was, the reason you were there was to make sure something like this didn't happen. You were in the best position to say stop, and you didn't. For the crime of manslaughter in the second degree, the defendant is hereby sentenced to an indeterminate sentence of imprisonment, having its minimum 3 years, maximum 9 years in the state of prison. In addition, there is imposed a mandatory surcharge, crime victim, and DNA fees totaling $375. The defense committed. Between 1/3 to 7 years in state prison, along with mandatory state surcharges. Is that the people's understanding?
It is, Your Honor.
Mr. Passalacqua, that's your understanding?
It is, Your Honor.
Well, that makes sense.
We did.
Would you like to hear?
Again, briefly, Your Honor. I expect we'll hear that Mr. Walters didn't do anything, that he wasn't in the room very much, and those things may be true, but he was in it, he was around it, he was hearing it, and he saw among the worst portions of the assault, and we know that because we see him on video. And I think more than anything else, that is what makes this case so important and what makes it so egregious. Because the violence is bad, and watching a group of people in a position of power abusing and ultimately killing a helpless, restrained man is bad. This is routine for them. That more than anything else was what we took away from that video. It will change how those people in those walls view their job. This was not acceptable. What Mr. Walters did was not acceptable.
Your Honor, at this point, I believe I've exhausted all that can be said with regard to Mr. Walters in this matter. Thank you.
Mr. Walters, is there anything that you would like to say prior to being sentenced?
I'm sorry.
And as to the conviction for manslaughter in the second degree, the defendant is hereby sentenced to an indeterminate sentence of imprisonment having its minimum 2 1/3 years as its maximum 7 years in state prison. In addition, there is imposed a mandatory surcharge, crime victim, and DNA fees, which will total $375. The defendant is committed for the term of his sentence.
May I protest on the PSI for the court?
Robert Brooks, continue to rest in peace. I am sending my condolences to the Brooks' family and to the CO's family who have small children. Keep them in prayer. Keep them in prayer. They had nothing to do with this. Nothing. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Thank you.